When the gates failed. Visual, slow motion close-up of a steel door vibrating from pounding fists. Red warning lights flash through thick smoke. Sirens wail. The air is filled with shouting, chaos, confusion, fear. Narrator, voiceover. They say you never forget the sound of a prison when it breaks. The alarms don't just ring, they scream. Cut to a tattooed inmate's hand, gripping a metal bar, so hard his knuckles bleed. Guards shout orders. Radios crackle, but their voices are swallowed by the roar of hundreds of men. When those gates jammed, everything changed. It wasn't guards versus inmates anymore. It was survival. A flash. Flames rise from a burning mattress. The camera pans across inmates fighting smoke, water spraying from broken sprinklers, and one man, Marcus Red Hall, standing still, watching it all unfold. You don't plan for a riot in a place that's already a war zone. You just wait for the day the walls finally give up. The screen shakes as an explosion echoes from the far corridor. A guard falls. Radios drop. The lights go out. Silence. Then, pounding. Dozens of fists hitting steel doors in unison. Marcus Red Hall voiceover, calm but heavy. I've seen men stab, burn, and break each other just to be heard. That's what they don't tell you about maximum security riots. Nobody's fighting for power. They're fighting to exist. The day the walls trembled, the alarm screamed first, a sharp, gut-punching wail that meant something terrible had begun. Flashing red lights slashed through the concrete gloom of Northgate Maximum Security Prison. The floor shook as if the whole building was alive and angry. Inside a unit, the most feared block in the entire facility, food trays lay overturned, doors jammed, and guards shouted orders no one obeyed. Lockdown. Lockdown now. But it was too late. The riot had already begun. Inmates burst in their cells like unleashed storms. Some with faces wrapped in torn shirts, others gripping sharpened pieces of plastic and metal. The air was thick with sweat, smoke, and rage. Up on the second tier, Marcus Red Hall watched everything unfold from behind the bars of his cell. He had survived fights before, even gang clashes. But this was something else. This was a full-blown rebellion. Someone set a mattress on fire. Another smashed a security camera. The control panel sparked and hissed. This ain't no regular riot, Red muttered under his breath. This is a takeover. As the fire alarms blared and the guards retreated, smoke rolled over the tiers like a living thing. Inmates roared together, fists pounding on metal. For the first time in his life, Red felt what true chaos inside a cage looked like, and knew it would only get worse. Cut to black. The sounds of screams echo through the dark. What caused this explosion? And how did anyone make it out alive? Hell inside E-Unit. Within minutes, E-Unit turned into a battlefield. Smoke filled the air so thick that inmates had to cover their mouths with ripped shirts just to breathe. Some tried breaking into the kitchen. Others rushed toward the control room. Metal bars echoed with the sound of shanks scraping steel. Marcus stayed low, crawling beneath the bunks. He wasn't part of a gang, but in a riot, no one's neutral. Everyone's a target. Red, you coming or what? Shouted Trey, his cell neighbor, waving a broken broom handle like a weapon. Red hesitated, and that hesitation saved his life. Seconds later, Trey ran forward and got hit in the face with a tear gas canister. The guards had regrouped on the other side of the unit, shields up, gas masks on. But they were outnumbered 20-1. A voice crackled over the intercom, broken by static. All units. E-block is gone. Repeat, control loss. The sprinklers burst open. Water poured down. Fire alarms blared. Smoke and steam mixed into a choking fog. And in that chaos, Red saw something that would haunt him forever. A guard trapped behind a fallen gate, begging for help while flames crept closer. No one helped. No one dared. When control is gone. By nightfall, the entire prison was in chaos. Sections were burned. Doors were off their hinges. The air reeked of smoke, pepper spray, and sweat. The inmates had created their own order. Leaders emerged. They took keys. They unlocked others. They armed themselves with broom handles, pipes, and sharpened spoons. We own this place now, someone shouted. Ain't no more rules. But Red knew better. The calm wouldn't last. He hid in the laundry room, clutching a wet rag over his face, listening to the madness outside. The guards had sealed the main gates, cutting off escape. The riot had turned inward, inmates against inmates. Factions began to form, gangs defending corners of the block, fighting for control like territories in the city. Someone screamed in the distance. Another fire started near the kitchen. Then came a deep, rumbling sound from outside, armored vehicles rolling in. The riot squad. Floodlights turned night into day. Loudspeakers blared warnings. Drop your weapons. Get on the ground. No one moved. Instead, someone threw another firebomb toward the yard. The wall shook. The lights flickered again. The riot was far from over. The raid. Just after dawn, helicopters hovered over Northgate. The SWAT teams were ready. The order had been given. Take it back, by force if necessary. Red could hear boots stomping to the halls, doors slamming and the thud of rubber bullets hitting flesh. Tear gas seeped through every crack. He pressed himself flat under a metal table as shouting filled the air. Hand where we can see him. Get down. One by one, inmates dropped to the ground, coughing, choking, crying. Others fought until they couldn't anymore. Through the haze, Red saw a flash, a guard helping drag another officer to safety. Despite the chaos, not everyone was cruel. There was fear, confusion, and something close to humanity. After 8 hours, the noise began to fade. Smoke cleared. Dozens were injured. 3 were dead. And Red, sitting against a wall, wrists zip-tied, eyes swollen from gas, realized something. They'll rebuild these walls. They'll clean the blood. But the fear, that stays. Northgate was changed forever. Fade out on slow, echoing sound of metal doors closing one by one. After the fire, the morning after the riot looked like a battlefield. Walls were black with smoke. Water flooded the floors. The air was thick with the sting of tear gas and burnt rubber. Guards in riot gear moved cautiously through the ruins, stepping over shattered glass and debris. Some of them still trembled from what they'd seen. Marcus read. Hall sat in restraints, staring at the broken remains of the prison he once called home. His voice was gone from coughing, his eyes swollen red. No one spoke. No one dared. Inmates were lined up, stripped and searched. Anyone suspected of leading the riot was dragged into isolation. The screams from the SHU, the Special Housing Unit, echoed for hours. When Red's turn came, a guard leaned down close to him and whispered, "You got lucky, Hall. A lot of your boys didn't." He didn't reply. He just stared straight ahead. Later that night, a van came for him and a handful of others. Their destination? Unknown. The vehicle drove for hours, through rain and darkness, until it stopped at a facility even more feared than Northgate. Stone Ridge Correctional Institution. A prison within a prison. A place for the ones they never wanted the world to hear from again. The silent place. From the moment Red arrived, he knew this was different. Stone Ridge wasn't loud like Northgate. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that eats at your mind. The cells were soundproof. The lights never fully turned off. Guards didn't yell here. They didn't need to. One wrong look, and you'd disappear for weeks. On his second night, Red met Malik, another transfer from the riot. His voice was hoarse, but his words sharp. They don't want us talking about what really happened. Northgate was a setup, man. Red frowned. A setup? Malik nodded. He claimed the riot wasn't as spontaneous as it seemed. According to him, the facility had been deliberately understaffed, the locks known to malfunction, and the response delayed on purpose. It sounded like paranoia until Red remembered the gate that jammed. The same one that started it all. Why would they let it happen? Red asked. Malik smirked. Control. Fear. Funding. The more dangerous the prison looks, the more money they get. Red didn't know what to believe anymore. But one thing was clear. The riot wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something darker. The cover-up? Weeks later, investigators arrived. They interviewed guards first, not inmates. Their reports were already written before they asked the first question. Unprovoked inmate attack. Unprecedented violence. Guards acted heroically. Not one word about cold meals, lockdowns, or the death of Darnell Smoke Jenkins. Red watched as news clips on the TV screen showed edited footage, burned hallways, overturned bunks, blurred faces. But no mention of what sparked it. A journalist tried reaching out once. Through a letter, it never reached Red. Inside Stone Ridge, information was tightly controlled. Letters were censored, calls were monitored, and the inmates who talked too much vanished. Red realized that the truth of Northgate was buried, sealed under layers of paperwork and fear. They turned chaos into a headline, he said quietly to himself, and us into monsters. He made a choice that night. He would survive long enough to tell the story himself. The confession, months turned into years. Red kept his head down, working in the kitchen, reading books, and writing notes on scraps of paper he hid inside old law magazines. He started recording everything he could remember, dates, names, the sequence of how the riot began, not for revenge, for truth. Malik was gone, transferred, they said, but Red knew what that meant. On the night of his 10th year inside, he finally got a chance. A new counselor, young, curious, maybe too idealistic, asked him during a session, "You were there, right? During Northgate?" Red hesitated, then nodded. "Tell me what really happened." For 2 hours he spoke, quietly, slowly, every detail. The hunger strikes, the beating, the gate malfunction, the fire, the chaos, the silence after. When he finished, the counselor's face was pale. "They never said anything about that in the reports," she whispered. Red just smiled faintly. "They never do. Freedom's price." After 15 years behind bars, Red finally walked out of Stone Ridge with nothing but a plastic bag of clothes and a head full of memories. The sun felt strange on his skin. The world had changed. Smartphones, new cars, new slang. But prisons? They hadn't changed at all. He sat down with a journalist weeks later and told the story you're hearing now. The riot, the lies, the cover-up. And when the camera light came on, Red looked straight into the lens and said, "People think riots happen out of nowhere, but they don't. They build up, slow, silent, like pressure under concrete. Then one day, something cracks and everyone inside pays a price." He paused. "If you ever want to know what hell looks like, don't look down. Look behind the walls." Fade out. The faint echo of metal doors closing plays under his last words. The story that shook the system. Red's interview hit the internet like a storm. The video was raw, dimly lit, his voice slow but steady. There were no fancy edits, just truth. And truth, in a world built on silence, was dangerous. Within 48 hours, millions had watched it. Former guards messaged anonymously. Ex-inmates started sharing their own stories online. Tales of broken locks, ignored complaints, and cover-ups buried under official statements. The Department of Corrections tried to downplay it. "We have no evidence of any misconduct," a spokesperson said on live TV. But then, leaked photos began to appear. Images from a Northgate riot, unseen by the public, showing flooded hallways, burned-out cells, and a guard hiding under a stairwell while inmates tried to break open a control box. The internet exploded. Hashtag Northgate Files began trending. Everyone wanted answers. And right in the middle of it was Marcus Red Hall, a man who just wanted to tell his story but had unknowingly started a movement. The leak. A week later, Red received an unmarked envelope in his mailbox. Inside were 2 USB drives and a note that said only, "You were right. Don't stop." The footage was worse than anything he'd imagined. Body cam videos from guards during the riot. Footage showing command officers retreating early, leaving units unmanned. Orders being ignored. Even a clip of an officer saying, "Let it burn out. They'll behave after." It was proof. Undeniable, chilling proof. Red took it to the same journalist who'd filmed his interview. They verified it, cross-checked timestamps, and confirmed it with ex-staff. Everything matched. When the video dropped, it spread like wildfire. National news picked it up. Protests began outside state offices. Politicians demanded investigations, and deep inside the Department of Corrections, panic set in. Files were pulled. Hard drives vanished. The system was eating itself from the inside out. Retaliation. But the truth always has a price. 2 days after the leak, Red's apartment was broken into. His laptop was gone. Papers scattered, walls marked with one chilling message written in red marker. Stop talking. The journalist who helped him receive threats too. Phone calls. Cars parked outside her home. Emails with no names attached. Red went into hiding. He stayed in motels under different names, using cash only. He moved every few days. Despite the fear, he kept uploading. Every new file, every testimony he could verify. And every post made the system crumble further. For every lie exposed, more people came forward. A guard admitted that they were ordered to stand down during the early minutes of the riot. A maintenance worker confirmed the locks were known to fail for months. The public's outrage grew, but so did the danger, the reckoning. Months later, a congressional hearing was announced. Cameras filled the room. Former prison officials sat under oath. And for the first time, the name Marcus read, Hall was spoken inside a government building. The chairman asked, did the department knowingly allow unsafe conditions that led to the Northgate riot? The official hesitated. Sweat formed on his brow. He said nothing. The silence told everyone what they needed to know. Outside, protesters held signs reading, silence is the real crime. Listen to the inmates. That night, Red watched the hearing from a safe house. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just sat quietly, the light of the TV flickering across his scarred face. They can't unsee it now, he whispered. That's all that matters. Legacy of the lockdown. 1 year later, the Northgate facility was permanently closed. A new warden took over at Stone Ridge. New rules were made, more cameras, more oversight, more transparency. But inside, Red knew the truth. Policies change, people don't. The same concrete, the same fear, the same cycle, still living on somewhere else under a different name. He began visiting schools, speaking to young people about choices, survival, and what it really means to live without freedom. Some listened, some didn't, but he kept talking. His final words in an interview still echo online today. You can cage a man's body. You can silence his voice. But you can't bury the truth forever. Not anymore. Fade out. The echo of prison doors closing one last time. Title card, dedicated to every inmate who spoke the truth and paid the price. The ripple effect. When Marcus read Hall spoke out, few expected it to spread beyond Northgate. But truth, once released, doesn't stop at one prison's gate. Within months, other former inmates began speaking up. Men from California, New York, and Colorado, each carrying scars and stories too similar to ignore. A man from Pelican Bay State Prison described a riot inside the SHU, the security housing unit, where inmates fought in total darkness after power was cut. A guard from Rikers Island leaked a logbook showing officers abandoning their posts during a 2018 brawl. And one chilling testimony came from ADX Florence, America's most secure prison, where inmates claimed riots never made it to media because entire blocks were sealed before word could escape. The public was shocked. How could so many stories sound the same? Silence, neglect, then violence, across states thousands of miles apart. Red watched it unfold from a quiet apartment in Chicago. He didn't say much, but every news story confirmed what he'd always known. The riot wasn't a Northgate thing. It was an American thing. The new voices. The movement found a name, #BehindTheWalls. It began as a hashtag and became a digital uprising. Former inmates recorded videos from halfway houses and reentry programs, sharing what really happens when control breaks inside maximum security facilities. Some described riots started by food shortages. Others said it began when mail was delayed, or when officers used force on the wrong man. Different sparks, same fire. News outlets began connecting the dots. Charts, timelines, leaked documents. The same problems repeated across every state. Overcrowding, understaffing, broken systems. Then came Angela Porter, a retired correctional officer from Pelican Bay, who confirmed what many had whispered for years. When we lost control during riots, she said, the order was to seal off and wait. They didn't want headlines. They wanted silence. Her testimony went viral overnight, and once again, the system scrambled to explain itself. The wall of denial. Prison departments across the country release carefully written statements. These claims are exaggerated. Our facilities follow national safety standards. We take all allegations seriously. But behind closed doors, panic spread. Internal memos leaked, revealing meetings about containment strategy. Not for riots, but for information. Whistleblowers face retaliation. Videos vanished from platforms. In some states, laws were quietly proposed to limit filming or reporting inside prisons. It was clear the system wasn't built to handle exposure. It was built to bury it. Marcus Red Hall, now living under a different name, gave one last message to a journalist who found him. They can patch walls, paint cells, and shuffle staff, but they can't hide forever. The walls are talking now. The documentary that changed everything. A production team gathered every story. Red's confession, the guards' leaks, the riot videos, the whistleblowers. The result was a 3-part documentary titled Lockdown Nation, Secrets of America's Maximum Security Prisons. The first episode opened with Red's voice. When those alarms sound, time stops. You don't see inmates and guards. You see survivors. The documentary hit streaming platforms in the US, UK, and Canada, and within a week, it became one of the most watched true crime documentaries of the year. Lawmakers faced public outrage. Prison watchdogs called for federal investigations. And for the first time, the words of forgotten men echoed to the halls of power. The echo behind the walls. Years later, Red's story became part of prison reform classes, journalism courses, and podcasts. He never sought fame, just peace. He lived quietly, occasionally writing letters to inmates still locked inside the same system he once fought to expose. Some wrote back, saying they'd watched his documentary on the facility TVs. You gave us a voice, one letter read. Now, they can't pretend we don't exist. Red folded the letter, smiled faintly, and whispered, "That's all I ever wanted." The camera panned slowly across the prison skyline, razor wire glinting under sunset, a siren echoing far in the distance, and the faint hum of lights flickering on as night returns to another locked world. Every wall has a story. Some just take longer to be heard. Fade to black. Title card. Based on true accounts from former inmates and officers across North America. The business of silence. When the smoke clears and the news cameras move on, what remains isn't justice. It's profit. Behind every riot, every lockdown, and every security upgrade lies a trail of money. Private contractors rebuild burned units. Companies sell riot gear, surveillance systems, and meal contracts. Consultants are hired to analyze inmate behavior, the same behavior they help create. Every outbreak becomes a reason to increase funding. Every headline becomes a call for tougher control. And the cycle feeds itself quietly, endlessly. The truth is, chaos inside sells stability outside. Marcus Red Hall once said it best. They make money every time we fight, every time we bleed, and every time we break. It wasn't just one prison. It was a business model. The last testimony, months after the documentary's release, Red was invited to speak at a criminal justice reform panel in Washington, D.C. He walked onto the stage in a simple gray suit, the same color as the jumpsuit he'd once worn for years. The room was silent as he adjusted the microphone. "I ain't here to make excuses," he began. "I did my time. I saw things I'll never forget. But what I saw inside those walls, that's not correction. That's corrosion. A system that feeds on pain, calls it justice, and hides it from the world." He paused, scanning the crowd, faces of reporters, lawmakers, students, and families of inmates. A riot ain't just inmates losing control. It's a cry, a message nobody listened to until it was too loud to ignore. He took a breath, his voice trembling. You can rebuild prisons. You can repaint walls. But until you rebuild people, You're just building better cages. The audience stood. Some clapped. Others wiped tears. And for the first time in his life, Marcus read, Hall felt truly free. Behind the walls, visuals, slow cinematic montage of empty prison corridors. Chains hang loose on cell doors. Graffiti on a wall reads, We were here. Footsteps echo, then fade into silence. In every prison riot, there's a moment when the noise stops and all that's left is truth. Truth about anger. Truth about neglect. Truth about what happens when people are treated like ghosts long enough that they forget they're human. Cut to Red walking alone down a long street at sunrise, free, but still haunted. Riots don't start with fire, the narrator continues. They start with silence. And maybe the real riot, the one that changes something, starts when someone finally decides to speak. The music swells, slow strings, faint metallic echoes of cell doors closing. Behind every wall is a story. Behind every silence is a voice. And sometimes one man's truth can bring down an entire system built to hide it. Camera pans up the skyline, distant prison lights flickering under the dawn.